By the end of this video, you will learn to use a free, powerful money management tool that will have a significant impact on how you view your finances today. I will walk you through the features that this tool has, how to input your numbers, and what to deduce from the results so that you can start making the necessary changes that will push you forward in your financial life. So with that being said, let's jump in. In a previous video, I've explained why what we earn does not really matter as much as what we keep and what we do with what we keep, which led me to emphasize on the concept of net worth. In other words, if your income has been going up over the years, but your net worth remains the same, or worse, it goes down, then you really aren't progressing much. I'll leave a link to that video somewhere up in the screen and in the description as well. Now, if that's the case, and your net worth is not budging at all over time, then that's a sign to stop and start digging why. Now you might ask me, Ismail, how on earth do I know what my net worth is and how it changed over time? And that's a valid question, and the answer to that, my dear friend, is to track it. And for that purpose, and because you're an amazing person, I've built you a spreadsheet tool that you can use to calculate and track your net worth. And don't worry, I will show you exactly how to use it in a moment. The link to access the spreadsheet is down below. You're very welcome to open it now and follow along with me. And if you can't do that, that's totally fine. You can always do what I'm going to show you later after the video. Right, time to go to my desk. Now, the first thing that I'd like you to do when you open the sheet is just go up at the top here to the left and then click on File, and then under File, click on Make a Copy, and that will allow you to just copy the sheet to your own drive so you can start editing it. Okay, so let's have a look at what the tool has now. At the very top here, you have your summary where you got your assets and liabilities, so that's the totals. That calculates your total net worth, which goes into this yellow box here. And then you have this ratio here, which is called the current debt to asset ratio. And don't worry about that, I will explain what that means, what the results for that mean in a minute. And then if we come here to the left, so this table to the left is your assets table, and that's everything that you basically own. And on the left side of the table, you have your asset description. So these are all the categories, which I'll talk about in a minute. On the far right, you have your amount, so the value of each of the assets. And then in the middle, you have your asset type. And what that really means is how easy it is to liquidate that type of asset. So you have two categories. So you have the long-term assets, and then you have the current assets. Current assets are anything that you can have access to pretty much instantly, like for example your bank account balance and your savings account. Those are things that you can access now or tomorrow if you wish. Things like stocks and shares, those are things that you can sell immediately and get cash. Things like your house, your car, these are all things that will take a while to get access to. And also things like your retirement account, although that's in your assets, you're not going to have access to it today if you're young. Now, this distinction is very, very important. And that's why at the bottom here, the assets are broken down into total current assets and total long-term assets. And I'll explain why I've broken them down and what you can use that for. Now let's have a look at the list of assets that I've got here. We start with real estate, main home. If you currently own a house, then you can go to any valuation website online and try to find the market value for your house at the moment. If you own any other homes, so that could be any rental properties that you have, then you have your commercial real estate. So if you own any shops that you rent out, that goes into there. Next is your retirement or pension account. If you are in the UK, the value of your retirement can go here as well. Then you have your stocks and shares. So if you own any company shares, you can put them into here and input the value of your current portfolio at the moment. And next up, we have bonds. So those are things like government bonds, bank account balance. So if you have any current accounts or checking accounts, their balance goes into here. Then you have your savings account balance. Please note here, I have marked this as a current asset. That's because a lot of people tend to put their savings in instant access savings accounts. However, if you're using a savings account that's a lock away saving account, then just change this to a long-term asset. You just go on the drop-down menu and change that to a long-term asset. But for now, I'll assume that you have your savings in an instant access account. Next on the list is business interests. So what that means is if you have any money that you are setting aside at the moment, which you are currently using for like side hustles or any part-time or full-time business activities, that goes into there. Also, if you happen to be lucky enough to own a business, then the value of your business can go into here as well. Next, we have cryptocurrencies. So if you own any Bitcoin or Ethereum, or any other type of crypto assets. That can go into here. Next up is vehicles. And that will be your main car that you use on a daily basis. Can go into here if you own one. And then we have other vehicles. So if you own a secondary car or another type of vehicle, that can go into here as well. Then we have jewelry. So if you own any jewelry that is valuable, that can go into here. Collectibles, so that is anything that you hold that can have value. So if you have, for example, any artwork that you own that holds value, that can go into this column here. And then we have household items. This doesn't have to be accurate, so you can just look around your house, try to get an estimate of all the furniture that you have is worth, and then input it into this table here. And then we have receivables. So receivables is if somebody owes you money, then that goes into here. I've marked it as a long-term asset, but if you are expecting to receive that money soon enough, you can change that to current asset if you wish. And then we have physical cash. Nobody really carries cash anymore these days, but if you happen to have any, that can go into there as well. And then finally, other assets. So this is anything that didn't fall into the above categories, you can input it in here. And then once you input all the numbers, then you will get a total here. And that total will be broken down depending on the selection that you've made in the type column. I want to make a very, very important point. Just because something is listed in the assets category does not mean it's a good asset. For example, a car, that's something that loses value really quickly once it goes out of the dealership. And things like your household items, those also lose value over time. So just be aware of this point. Now, if you look on the right side of this tool, we'll see the liabilities table. Structured in a similar manner like the assets table, you have your description of each liability, and then you have the type of the liability. That would depend on whether it's a long-term liability or a current liability. A long-term liability is generally anything that you have more than a year to pay back, whereas a current liability is anything that you need to pay generally within 12 months time. The reason why I broke them down is, again, there is a really important distinction here. Current liabilities are things that you really need to be aware of, and in most times it contains the sort of debt that has really high interest rate, which you really need to pay back as soon as you can. So things like credit cards, for example, those can compound very quickly. And then at the very bottom of the table here, you have the breakdown of your total current liabilities and total long-term liabilities, and then the overall total across those two types. Okay, so let's actually do a practice run, and I'm just going to imagine someone named Beth. So we'll take the example of Beth and start filling some numbers so you can see what it looks like. Let's say that Beth owns a house valued at $600,000. Let's assume that Beth doesn't have any other homes, no commercial estate. Let's say that she has, let's put $80,000 in the retirement account. Let's say that Beth holds some shares of a company, which are valued at $30,000. Beth doesn't have any bonds. Bank account balance, I'm going to put $5,000 there. Savings account, let's go with $12,000. Business interest, let's assume that there are none for now. Cryptocurrencies, I'm going to assume that there are none for now as well. Vehicles, Beth's car is worth $15,000. No other vehicles. Jewelry, let's put $500. Collectibles, let's go with none. Household items, let's go with 6,000. Receivables, assume there are none. Physical cash, and nobody carries cash these days, so I'm going to go with none. And then other assets, I'll keep that as none. Right, so if we now go down to the totals, we see that Beth has a whopping $748,000 in assets. However, notice how only 47,000 of those assets are current assets, which mean are things that she can liquidate very easily if she wanted the money from today. And that's why it's really, really important to break down those types of assets. So that way you know exactly what you have if you ever need the money immediately. Okay, now let's go to the liabilities table and start filling some numbers. I'm gonna assume that Beth has another $400,000 remaining on her mortgage. No mortgage for the homes, no mortgage for commercial estate. Car loans, let's go with $6,000 left to pay back. Student loan, let's go with 15,000 remaining. Credit card debt, I'll go with $800. Personal loans, let's go with none. Tax liabilities, I'm gonna put a little something there. Let's put $3,000. Medical bills, I'm gonna go with none. Lines of credit, go with none. Deferred payment, no deferred payments. No bank overdrafts, and no other types of debt. And now if we go to the totals section, then we see that the total liabilities for Beth is $424,000. A big part of it is long-term liabilities, which is pretty good, and only $3,800 at the moment in current liabilities that she needs to pay back in less than 12 months. Right, so now that we did that, we can go to the summary at the top and start seeing. So this is your total assets, this is your total liabilities, which gives Beth $323,000 in net worth. Not bad. Now I'd like to explain this current debt to asset ratio to you. So this number is basically just dividing the current assets by the current liabilities. So in Beth's case, it would be $47,000 divided by $3,800, and that gives us 12.3. And what that tells us is that Beth has 12 times more assets that can be easily liquidated than current liabilities. So she's more than capable of covering her short-term debt quite easily. Now the rule of thumb here is if this number is above 1, then that's good, because it means you have enough current assets to cover your short-term debt. And if it is under 1, then it means that you have more short-term debt than what you hold in current assets. And that's exactly why I've added this ratio here, because it's incredibly important to keep an eye on those short-term debt, as those types of liabilities have very high interest rate and can very easily erode your financials. Right, so there is something else that I want to show you as well. So if you go down here, there are 2 tabs. The first tab is just the one that we are looking at now, but the second tab is about tracking your net worth over time. So in here, I've put a table where at the day that you're doing the calculations, you can input the date. So I'm just going to go with, let's say, 1st of January 2025. If we go back to the main sheet, I'm going to take the net worth, copy that, and then paste it here. I'm going to paste values only so it doesn't mess up the formatting. And now the graphical representation will start to show. The beauty of this is if, for example, you come back after 3 months and you do the same. So I was going to put 1st of April 2025. Let's say at that time your net worth have increased to 350,000. And now you start seeing that trend over time. Let's say again you do this every 3 months, you can start to see whether your net worth is going up or staying the same or going down. Now, as I mentioned before, the link to this sheet is in the description, so feel free to open it and start filling your numbers. Right, back to my face again. Now, if there's one thing to learn from this video is please spare just half an hour to go through the sheet and do your numbers. And look, I completely understand that some of you might not like the results they see after doing the calculations and seeing the results, but that's exactly the point, because now you are fully aware of where you currently stand. And even better, you can now see the detailed breakdown of which areas in your assets are lacking that you can improve and which liabilities are dragging you down that you can prioritize. It certainly beats the hell of not knowing about it and letting it get worse year after year. Because remember this, we cannot improve what we don't know. So please take the time to do it now and come back again later and do it again and assess the difference from last time. And you can update this at the frequency that you like. Once a month, once a quarter, or even once a year. That's totally fine. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next one.